Hi, welcome back to Future Fast. And those of you who are here for the first time, I would really urge you to look up for the first part of our conversation with Dr. William Andrews. And the conversation has been about longevity, and perhaps you heard, and that's why you're here. But don't want to miss the first part of our conversation. So please do look up that. And if you have not yet subscribed to Future Fast, time to click on the button to start subscribing it right away. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for supporting and following Future Fast. And I'm sure you're enjoying the conversations as much as I'm doing it, bringing it to you. So, with that, we will jump back into our conversation with Dr. William Andrews. Bill, thank you so much once again for making time to be with us and share your perspective. And in this part of the conversation, I want to talk about, or rather, start with uh, how do you relate to the relevance of longevity as a concept in a context of 8 billion people population. uh, we just recently crossed 8 billion population globally, and also the context of we just came out of the pandemic, and third is that we are still going on with a war which is more than a year old now in Ukraine and Russia, and which has got many of the Western countries supporting Ukraine. It's short of a world war with a threat of nuclear war hanging over our head. So, in all this context, how do you see it?
Well, let's first talk about population. Yeah, I mean, there could be a real problem. Okay, and in my very first book, there was a whole chapter that I wrote on all the problems that could happen if we were to cure aging, and overpopulation is one of them. But as I said before, humans can adapt to things. Okay, and if we did have a situation where we cured aging, I think people are going to figure out ways to prevent the overpopulation problem. If it's birth control or what, I don't know what it is. Or, NASA is already trying to look for other planets, that we could put people on, and we're getting ready to put colonies on Mars. I don't know. I don't have the solutions to those, but I have faith in the fact that others will, especially those people that are very interested in a cure for aging. They're gonna figure out ways to do it. But I just feel like if I wasn't working on trying to cure aging and I had the time to start figuring out how to solve the problems, I could solve them. Okay, but I don't know. Now, the biggest problem is, how will the young ever get jobs if the old never retire? That's what I think is going to be the biggest problem. And again, I don't have a solution. I see it as a problem, but I think the problem is not going to be as bad as the problem we have now, which is people dying all the time, people getting old and being unhappy and being miserable and dying. So I figure we're creating a new problem that isn't as bad as the present problem.
Oh, well, you may recall in France there were some riots because they extended the retirement age by 2 more years. Which they extended the retirement age by 2 or 3 more years, and which led to many young people protest over it because they saw that much delayed opportunity for them.
Yeah, proof that I'm right. I mean, it's like, yeah,
Yes.
it is a problem. Okay, but I think the problem we have right now is even worse. In fact, think of the riots 200 years from now after we cure aging. If somebody starts banning it, those riots are going to be a lot worse than the riots that are occurring in France right now.
Well, hopefully by then, like what you said, we would have perhaps colonies in Mars and Moon and don't know where else. Perhaps there'll be mid-space colonies, virtual colonies, not necessarily another planet or satellite. So
Yeah.
I think hopefully we'll. And another thing is that interestingly, we had another guest in my podcast, Future Fast. I think it was Machaya, who said that population is not going to grow further. He says that his argument was that we will stop at 8. it's not a linear progressive number. It will not continue to grow to 9 and 10 like how it has been projected even by United Nations, that we will cross 9 billion in some time and 10 billion in some time. So he makes a strong argument to say that we will stop at 8, and that is where things will settle down. So there are different sides of arguments for the same things.
I don't know how I could imagine ever believing that to be true. I think we are going to get to 9, and it's going to have to take a big change in the attitude of everybody to not have that happen. And
Oh
I
no!
don't think
See, he was basically dipping into the statistics. See, even in India, average population growth rate is below 2. So, if it has to keep growing, we need to be there. And, many of the European countries, it's already gone to 1.3, below 1.5. And India's average is also going to 1.7 or 1.9. So you need a healthy rate is 2.2. So we are already well below that. China is already well below 2. So India has overtaken China's population already. So I think
there's a
if you
there's a problem with it.
statistically, there is a problem with that, but we are going to have more aged people.
I know,
The
but
world is
the
having more aged.
you cut out. I've lost you.
No, the world is having more aged people, and it is going to be true even for China. And India today has 50% of the population below 35. So most of Indian politicians would like to call ourselves as a young country. But we have nearly 17% of the population, which is 65 plus. So that is what is making me think that we are nearly an American population of 65 plus, a little less, a little short of
I'm
American
very
population.
aware of all that. It's called the silver phenomenon. Okay, and that's a really big problem because there's not going to be enough caregivers for
Correct.
all the older people, and that's another reason why we need to cure aging, because there's going to be so many people that are going to be old and not being able to take care of themselves, and not enough young people to do the work, that we got to find another solution to the problem. I don't know if you're familiar with Hanson Robotics and other robotic companies, but
Yeah.
I preach to them all the time that what they really need to start doing is they need to start creating robots that are designed just to be caregivers. Okay, because if we don't cure aging, caregiving is going to have to be done by robots all the time.
I did see some such videos where they are working on things like that. But on the same breath, the war situation as well, right? I mean, I think we humans are tuned to destroy ourselves.
Well, I was wondering about that because you mentioned nuclear war and stuff like that. And I'm not. Could you explain the question a little further? Because I'm not exactly certain the connection between curing aging and nuclear wars.
No, it's just the human sentiment that we still try to overpower. The Russia and Ukraine war was supposed to be a short war, but we have crossed 1 year.
I
And there
know.
is more ammunition being supplied into Ukraine. So it is no longer two nations fighting, it's multiple nations versus one nation. And possibly these are the kind of things which led to world wars in the past. And now we are talking about Russia, which is loaded with nuclear arsenal. So, I mean, it can potentially lead to it if more outside supporters jump into the frame more openly. It can potentially lead to a nuclear war as well.
What does that have to do with curing aging,
Given these scenarios where people are trying to destroy themselves, right? We as human beings are trying to destroy ourselves. So, how do you see that we also want to live forever, but we also want to destroy each other? More philosophical perspective on this. That's where I was thinking of getting your thoughts on that.
I think it's only the top leaders in the countries that are really interested in the wars. The soldiers are pretty much brainwashed into thinking this is the right thing to be doing and stuff. And so I believe that in general, people don't want to destroy themselves. Okay. they've just been, it's like drink the Kool-Aid, they get brainwashed and
Right.
they do that kind of stuff. But it's like, but I mean, if anything, war might solve the overpopulation problem, but I don't like that solution. And the other problem is that if we destroy ourselves, maybe I'm wasting my time trying to cure aging. But I still would want to do it. I'd still want to work on it because it's
Because we all like to believe sanity will prevail sometime and they will not get on to doing it.
I know, but it's like I've given up. I still think about, like, in the United States, I think there's been so much terrorism. Even some of the famous folk heroes in our history, I now consider absolute terrorists, like Christopher Columbus, who discovered America. I mean, when I grew up learning about him as a kid, nobody told me about how he got on the shore and slaughtered everybody in sight. And then, George Custer, I don't know if you know who he is. He was somebody who was a big Indian fighter who fought all the Indians and Indians by American Indians, not India.
Understood. Yeah.
When the white people came to the United States, we wouldn't call them the United States then. When we came here, we just killed everybody, and I think that's terrible. I hate the thought of when we find life on other planets. Are we going to kill them too? I mean, it's like, and then I was watching some survey where, like, 20 and 30-year-olds were being questioned about how would they react if suddenly an alien spaceship landed, and they were saying, "We'll drop a bomb on them, kill them." And I thought, God, something's wrong. Something's wrong. I'm different from everybody else. I'm very anti-guns. I don't even like being around one. I don't like fighting. I think there's solutions to everything that can be done peacefully. But in the meantime, I'm going to work on curing aging, and if the rest of the world just goes to pot, I don't know what I'm going to. I'll probably have enough money by curing aging to be able to find my own planet to go live on or something like that.
True. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So how are you? Do you want to talk about Sierra Sciences? What are the things that you're doing? And you also talked about many technologies and many IPs. And you also mentioned in our earlier conversation that there are IPs and patents that you have, which you're also partnering with various organizations for them to go to market with, and where they give you license fee. So, do you want to talk about what kind of licenses are there? What kind of commercializable patents are there?
Well, I actually never actually licensed the patents. Okay. And I have a belief that patents aren't something that I get, that I have, because I got over 50 patents now on our research. But I don't believe that patents are for the purpose of preventing others from doing the same work. Okay. So the only reason I file patents is to keep somebody else from telling me I can't do the work. Okay.
All right.
So
right.
I don't really look at the patents as valuable, commercial, financially valuable. I just look at them as a way to protect myself, to keep somebody from telling me I can't do this research.
Or stopping you from doing something that you want to do. Wonderful. Yeah.
And so I do have a lot of people that are competing with my patents right now, and I'm not doing a thing about it. People are saying, well, I should go tell them I have a patent and they should be paying me for being able to do the work. I just won't do it. It's just against my better nature. I want to see.
What are those products or technologies that you mentioned about go to market, and they paying you for that?
So I've discovered. So my main mission, the main thing I want to do is I want to develop a pill that you swallow, and it contains a chemical that will get inside of your cells and cause the gene for telomerase to get turned on so that it will lengthen your telomeres. That's my number one goal. Okay. Now, in the meantime, I also want to get what's called gene therapy done. Gene therapy is where we create a virus that we infect people with. And when people get infected, the virus carries the gene for telomerase into the cells and produces telomerase. So there's two different things. One is gene induction. The chemicals I first mentioned will induce the gene that we already have inside of our cells. Gene therapy will deliver a new gene to the cells that's already engineered to be turned on. Now, so the thing that I don't like about the gene therapy is that it's extremely expensive. We estimate that it will cost about $1 million per dose for us to, it will cost me $1 million to treat one patient once. Okay. But I look at that as proof of concept, okay, to show that producing telomerase in cells will work so that we can then get more funding for our small molecule approach, which I think will cost me $1 per dose, okay, to produce enough for people. That's why before I said I'd love to drop it from airplanes and give it away for free. Now, another thing that we've done is we've also discovered a lot of nutraceuticals. And I've never really been interested in nutraceuticals because I've always been of the belief that there was a nutraceutical out there that could cure aging, we'd already see people living to be 500 years old. And so I believe that because people are eating everything. So I believe nutraceuticals is never going to result in something to cure aging. But we did discover a lot of them that produce very low levels of telomerase that should at least slow down the aging process. And so what I've done is I've licensed those to several companies, and I've licensed some of our chemicals, so the pharmaceuticals that are weaker than what we're looking for to other companies, and they're marketing products with that on. But I never licensed the patents to them. Okay, so but I told them that they have either non-exclusive or exclusive rights to market the product depending on the licensing fees they pay and their success at generating royalties for us to fund our research with. Okay, so if somebody markets a product and then a year later they're providing us with very little royalties, they lose their exclusivity. Okay, they can still sell it, but I'm going to find somebody else to sell too, because I'm not trying to make a lot of money. I just want money to fund my research. Okay, because every penny I make goes straight into research. So I have numerous companies that are marketing products that are gene therapies, nutraceuticals, and pharmaceuticals. Now I also have go-to-market partnerships for cancer. Okay, so I've developed some really good cancer diagnostics, and I've also developed some really great cancer treatments. Okay, now the treatments are still at the theoretical stage because we haven't tested them except in vitro. So in cells in a petri dish. So what I need there is I need somebody to take it on and do the clinical studies, or even do the preclinical studies with animals and do the clinical studies and then market them. Okay, because I don't want to market. I don't want to do the preclinical and clinical studies on cancer when I've got 100% of my time focused on trying to come up with an anti-aging pill. Okay, so I don't want any of that kind of stuff to distract from what I'm doing, but I do consider these cancer treatments and cancer diagnostics as a source of funding to fund my anti-aging research. And I strongly believe that the cure for cancer is anti-aging, the real cure, the ultimate.
So the businesses, the people who are interested in doing this with you could they could have I think it demands exclusive rights for them, because if they have to indulge in doing preclinical study and clinical research, and then go to market, because it also involves going through the process of compliance, which is significant, no matter which part of the world you're in. So
Every product has to go through that process. That's
correct.
I mean,
So,
so I don't.
so you will do the documentation necessary to that effect to give them that amount of thing, so that they can go to market and then they fund, or is it that you would like to have an upfront money? How is it? Is it once they go to market, as they start generating money, they pay a share out of that? How do you see that, or is it that
Okay, so
they,
in all of my business plans, where I talk about all the go-to-market partnerships, I say there's no licensing fee unless they want an exclusivity. Okay, but I want them to generate royalties and pay, and sell the products and generate royalties that they give to me, and I give them a minimum of like $100,000 within per month for the first year. Okay, and if they don't, they just lose their exclusivity. Or if they don't have an exclusivity, I just look for another partner anyway. Okay, but I often say that if somebody wants a non-exclusive ability to market the products, and if they do really well, I'm going to give them exclusivity. Okay.
Okay.
If they don't do well, they lose that option. But I'm not trying to get a lot of licensing fees. Okay.
Right.
I'm making enough money to go to market partner royalties already that I don't need it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, Bill, at this point in time, I'll just tell the audience and listeners that the links are there below this podcast itself, so you can look them up. What are the things? And you can also reach out to people at Sierra Sciences, so that they will respond to your queries on that, all your interests. So the links are there right below this podcast. Yeah.
Give them my email. Provide them with my email address.
Wonderful. So email IDs are also there, so you can just write to him and seek all your clarifications in this context. Yeah. So, Bill, now that you talked about this products that people can go to market with and they can reach you. So that once we get past, and if we are getting back to your efforts on longevity, and if you can call it defeating death, how do you measure your efforts? Because traditionally the efforts are best measured in the outcome. But what are the short-term goals that you set for yourself from a point of view you are in the right track? How do you do that? Also, that you don't see. Another thing is that sometimes having an investor is that they keep checking on, okay, what's happening, what happened to this milestone and that milestone. But now that you've managed to get all your equity back and you control your company completely, so how do you measure your journey from a point of you're going towards where you want to go?
Okay, so I guess you're talking about the science. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so on science, it's really simple. Okay, I just have this saying that every experiment, we have to learn something from it. Okay, period. Okay, so I have strategy meetings in the same room we're in right now. Scientists will show their data on projector, and I'm just constantly making certain that all the controls are there, that really good science is done. And because we can't predict the future, we're always venturing into the unknown. Okay, so I don't believe in what are called drop dead dates. Okay, you have to get this project done in this amount of time. What I say is you have to have an answer in this amount of time, an answer so that we know what the next step is, and then we have that done, then that done. So I don't really look at setting. I never set milestones. I don't say, here's a budget for the project, here's how much time you have to do it, go do it. Okay, I don't work that way. Every company I've ever worked for worked that way, and I thought it was very unproductive. Okay, and as a result,
I
copy
completely
science.
agree with you. Yep.
So so the measure is almost weekly. Okay, is like, how good is the science been? What did we learn? You know, every scientist here will tell you, I really hate it when an experiment is done and nobody can make any sense out of it and nobody learned anything from it. Okay, that usually means that somebody did something wrong. Somebody didn't design the experiment, didn't anticipate all the possibilities, didn't control for all the possibilities, and as a result, the study has to be repeated from scratch. That really annoys me immensely. Okay, because I want to know that we've always made a step forward, and so that's really the measurements. Okay, in the science. I mean, on some of the projects, like the project of just searching for the pill that induces enough telomerase to lengthen telomeres, I have been able to extrapolate from previous success that when we have at least $2 million a month to be spending on that project, because when we had that for a while, we were able to measure our success rate. Okay, I actually put it up on a graph. You know how much we could extrapolate to how long it would take before we were producing enough telomerase to stop telomere short. And so I've been able to extrapolate with error bars and say, when we have $2 million a month to spend, it'll take us 1 to 3 years, okay, to get that done. So that's rare when I got enough information to be able to make a prediction like that. But that's what it came down to, because we've done so much work on that already. It's kind of fairly easy to extrapolate to that result. Now, I'm not saying we're going to have aging cured in 1 to 3 years. I'm saying we're going to have a small molecule that will induce sufficient amount of telomerase to keep telomeres from shortening. Okay, then we can ask the question: did we cure aging? Did we do anything at all? Did we cause cancer? Then we'll find out. Okay, but I'm not making a goal if we're going to have aging cured in 3 years. I'm saying we're going to have a drug that could possibly cure aging in 3 years that will be ready to test. So measurements like that. Then there's clinical. I mean, I've already done a lot of work on clinical studies for our gene therapies, and I'm not saying. So in those studies, the result is to get the questions answered. So in the clinical studies, we test about 100 different biomarkers, and we're testing for all kinds of side effects and things like that. And in the clinical studies, right, as soon as we get them started, the first tests are just going to be to see what the data looks like. If somebody actually gets younger during the result, great, that's fantastic. But I look at it as hope for the best, plan for the worst. Okay, so we're going to be treating people with our gene therapy, but I'm going to work on the assumption that it doesn't make people younger, and I want to know why. Why didn't it? Okay, so I want to have every marker tested, everything imaginable from every different direction. That's why it's going to cost $1 million to treat one person once. Maybe after we get the drug and it's all tested and everything like that, maybe it'll cost only like $300,000 for a dose. But it's only the super wealthy are going to be able to afford it. Insurance will never cover it. That's not my mission. That at least we have proof of concept. But then I'd want to get this a lot more enthusiasm to get the small molecule made that would do the same thing.
Right. So maybe in my next part, I'll ask you to set some indication of timeline for that. But before that, so what kind of technologies do you see that are actually impacting this space in the biosciences and the efforts that you're putting in? Obviously, I thought AI perhaps is making it faster for you from a point of simulating and arriving at faster process, developing faster process for you. No?
There's two technologies that we want to develop here ourselves that doesn't exist. Okay, that's fairly straightforward, and that's one of the go-to-market partnership things that I have. But I want to develop these technologies as tools. But besides that, I always say the only obstacle is the funding. We know exactly what to do. We have all the equipment here to do it. Okay, I've got I own all the equipment here. I've got every piece of equipment you can imagine to do science with here. And the only problem is we don't have enough funding to use.
But what technologies you're talking? I mean, is it something you can talk about? As what are the technologies that will impact?
Like robots. We have several robots that do a lot of our high throughput screening. We have mass spectrometers to be able to analyze the chemicals that we're working with, and we have tissue culture, bioreactors for culturing things. I mean, we pretty much have everything we need except the funding. I'm trying to think of going through the labs. We have like PCR machines galore. We have something like 15 tissue culture hoods or cell culture hoods, they're called. Electrophoresis apparatuses everywhere. Microscopes, we have the best microscopes in the world. People are always saying we should get an electron microscope. I'm saying we don't need an electron microscope. If we had one, nobody would use it because there's nothing we can do with it. So light microscopes, we have a lot of use for. So we have some very powerful light microscopes that use light instead of electrons. We're not deficient in, as I said, we have 10,000 square foot of lab space here. Okay, we have 2 rooms is where the accountant works, that keeps track of the costs and stuff like that, and interacts with our tax accountant. But there, those 2 offices are accessible from the outside, and they never even come into the labs. As soon as they go into their offices, if they went one door further, they'd be in lab space. But so the technology, we're not short on technology at all. We're only short on funding. And I got to say that if we did have a lot of funding, we would buy duplicates of a lot of the equipment we have. Like, for instance, the robots. I mean, we could always use more robots, okay? But we already have robots that allow us to test 4,000 different chemicals a day, okay? So there's no way we as humans can keep up with the robots. So we're the bottleneck, not the robots. Right. But if I got $300 million from somebody to do the research, then the robots would become a bottleneck. So we'd probably get some more robots too. Robots are probably, they cost about $1 million each. Those are probably our most expensive pieces of equipment. Oh, well.
Right. Okay. Right. Bill, if you are to identify or recognize a few of your failures till date, so what would they be? And
you cut out.
Oh, if you are to recognize or identify few of your failures till date, right? Or failures as in mistakes. What would they be, and how do you see them contributing to your actions going forward?
Well, I always say my biggest failure was getting investors. Okay, I say that if I was to do it all over again, when I was 30 years old, I would have started a company that had nothing to do with aging. The only purpose of the company was to make as much money as possible. I would do that. In fact, when I go to schools and talk to students about being entrepreneurs, especially if their students are have a dream of doing something worthwhile like I do, like curing aging or curing cancer or something like that, I say, you're going to find that investors invest in the dream, but not the dream coming true. So I would go and make your money first and then be your own investor. Okay. And that's what I would do. If I could be 30 years old again, I would start a company just for the purpose of making money so that I would be then my own investor and could have the $300 million to do all the research, and I would pay for every bit of it.
Hmm.
So
So,
that's my biggest mistake.
sure.
Science
Yeah.
and science and technology, I haven't made any mistakes. I've had a very successful career. I've taken over many projects that others failed at and made them work. Okay. So it's like I don't look back at my career as, boy, I wish I had figured out how to succeed.
Well, I thought you would probably say that your mistake was to take the investors on board, which you eventually bought them out. But
Yeah,
probably I thought you'll recount that.
That's the first thing I said. My biggest mistake was accepting investors.
Accepting. You did mention that whole thing in the first part. So yeah. So yeah, I think it's a great advice. In fact, that's what but the lure of doing things with other people's money is too much. And unfortunately, today, most startup founders, it looks like they build the plan to get money from others rather than build it to do what they want to do. So it's so anyway. How do you see uh, the uh, market globally in the longevity space? Who are the players uh, you see are doing something worthwhile in the space?
Okay, well, that's where it gets complicated because there's a lot of people in the anti-aging field that are making a lot of money. Okay, but they're not doing any good science. They're not actually doing anything that's going to really change the world. They're just making a lot of money. Okay.
Nobody in the.
You cut out again. I can't hear you. For some
I
reason,
mean,
your mic.
absolutely nobody doing something which is going to have, or
I'm
all
gonna
of them. I'm
gonna name a few people. Okay.
Okay.
They are Aubrey de Grey. Aubrey is a very fascinating person. I think he's one of the leaders in the field of anti-aging. He's very obsessed with curing aging. There's
Yeah.
Elizabeth Parrish. Elizabeth Parrish runs a company called BioViva. She's not driven by money. She really wants to cure every disease on the planet, and she's working around the clock on doing it. There's Dr. Greg Fay, Fahy. He's very, very interested in health, curing aging, curing diseases, things like that. He's not obsessed with how much money he's going to make. There's Dr. Mike West, who is actually my boss at Geron Corporation. He's super passionate about curing aging. I mean, when you ask me about who my mentors would be, I'd say he was the closest one to being a mentor because I did learn quite a few things from him. I think he learned a lot from me too. Let's see, who else? I think those are the major ones. Oh, Dr. Michael Rose. He's one of the tops in the fields. He's been in the aging field. He's of all the people I've mentioned. Well, actually, Mike West and Mike Rose. They've been in the anti-aging field longer than I have, and because I really didn't seriously get into even though I've been interested in anti-aging my whole life, I didn't actually start working in anti-aging until early 1990s. In the late 1980s, I did work on a cure for osteoporosis, which was probably the first anti-aging research that I did. But so let's see, who else? I'm sure if I thought about it some more, I'd come up with some other names.
Yeah.
There's actually some super passionate people that aren't scientists that
Okay.
are also there, and that like Jim Stroll. Jim Stroll, he runs an organization called People Unlimited, and is also he's the organizer of the RadFest conference that I speak at every year. He's one of the most passionate people I know. He works with a guy named Joe Bardeen and a woman named Bernie. They're just as passionate. They're a great team. And I think the organization is the #1 supporter of me and Aubrey and Liz and the 2 mics that I mentioned. Let's see. Bill Falloon. There's a Bill Falloon who runs the company Life Extension. He's super passionate about curing aging. But then there's other people like in cancer and like Jason Williams, Dr. Jason Williams, who I mentioned before. There's Dr. Joe Parita, Dr. Neil Reardon. Both Joe Parita and Neil Reardon are leaders in the field, in the stem cell field. Very passionate about what they're doing. They're not in it for the money. The Dr. Dipnarine Maharaj is a doctor in South Florida that just amazes me because he's so passionate about everything related to curing cancer and stem cells and things like that. I mean, the more I think about it, the more names I'll come up with. But I can for every person I just named, I can name 10 people who I'm not going to mention their names that really are just, in my opinion, just trying to make a buck and will do anything, including lie, to make that money. Okay, and some of these are really famous people that have made fortunes, become very, very well known, but I don't think they have the drive like the other people I mentioned to actually do something really significant.
Well, at this point, I'd have to mention that, in fact, we had the privilege of hosting Aubrey here, like you. And so, to the listeners and audience, if you have not listened to or seen the conversation with Aubrey de Grey, I really urge you to go back and look them up. Fantastic conversation. So, I'm sure you will enjoy
I
it.
highly recommend it too. I didn't know he was one of your shows, but I'm going to go watch it.
I'll share the link. Yeah. Well, wonderful. Thank you. And with this, how do you see, Sierra Sciences and your effort towards this evolving in US and globally, particularly that, you're also now collaborating with more of a go-to-market players, but are you also collaborating with any research institutions globally towards this effort or within USA?
I have in the past. I mean, I collaborate with Aubrey and Liz Parrish all the time. Okay, but and we all three of us, we support each other tremendously. But I've done a lot of like where I will collaborate with an academic lab. I'll provide the funding, they'll do the research. But in all cases, I've been tremendously disappointed in their ability to get things done. And it's partially because they have their teaching requirements and they have their grants that they have to write. And they really don't have time to do all the work they said they can do. And then they have their graduate students doing the work, and the graduate students usually don't do the experiments right or leaving out controls and things like that. And I end up throwing away a lot of money, okay, and never getting the work done, and then just doing it myself. And I've even had one scientist here that was at a university local here. I gave him something like $200,000 to do some research for us, and he skipped town. He ran away with the money. But it's like we never found him. Okay, so, but it's so I've learned that collaborations don't work really well unless you work with a CRO, a contract research organization, where they've become real specialists at what they do, and then I only have them do their specialty. Okay, for instance, there's a company called ViralVec, okay, that's in the San Francisco Bay Area, south of San Francisco, that produces gene therapies. Okay, they're so good at it, we design them and then give them the information, and then they build them for us. Okay, and the turnaround time is amazing. Their success rate is amazing. The other thing is, like, you would think that we're a biotech company. You would think we'd have a DNA sequencing lab, but we work with an organization, a CRO, that's so good at DNA sequencing, their turnaround so fast, that it's cheaper and faster and more efficient for us to have them do it for us. Okay, but otherwise, besides those aren't really research collaborations. Those are where they're contract research organizations. But pretty much I've given up on doing.
Have you tried doing anything globally, internationally, outside of USA?
Oh yeah, internationally, yeah, several times, including one lab in India. Okay.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Near Delhi. Yeah.
And how was your experience? I'm just curious.
I'm not going to mention names.
Okay.
It was actually probably better than most. Okay. The most disappointing labs have been the university labs here in the United States. So I got to say that the lab we worked with India about 6 years ago actually was a lot more productive than the research that we did here with universities in the United States.
Right. Well, you actually mentioned some of the names in terms of who are the people who are contributing to this space, right? Including Aubrey, a host of other names that you mentioned. But I think almost all the names are American, right? Anybody outside of US that you actually also follow their research effort? Or
there are. Gordon Laus, LAUC. I just, for some reason, as I was thinking about it, you're right. I did kind of focus on the people that I see the most often. But there's definitely, so Gordon Laus, he's in Croatia. He's a super good scientist. There's a few of them that I don't know how to pronounce their last names. I know their first names. And there's a doctor in Japan, going blank on his name, that I work with on.
Yeah. Interestingly, Japan is the first country in the world to go gray, right? I mean, so.
Korea.
Yeah. Korea as well? Okay.
Korea's, you walk around the streets in Korea, half the women you see have bandages on their face because of plastic surgery. They're still into anti-aging. But Japan is just like that. But I was talking about the.
But what about people there? Are they not researching on anti-aging? Because they are the ones who are of the.
Oh yes, some of the top anti-aging researchers are in Japan. Yeah, so I have collaborated with quite a few of them, but mostly it's talking about getting together for discussions and going to conference. I've gone to spoken in many conferences in Japan that was all about longevity and had longevity scientists, and we just collaborated. But I actually, it's rare when I actually have them do any research for us. Okay, because I prefer to do our own research in-house.
Is that a language issue? Is it that they are not as comfortable speaking English? Is that what it is?
The only language issues are Americans. Okay, we speak English. Okay, every country we go to, everybody speaks English. Okay, and there's some bad jokes that I tell all the time about Americans are the worst when it comes to learning other languages. I would, personally, I would love to start a collaboration with some other foreign country that we got really serious about, and I would learn their language in a moment, right? And as fast as I could. But we haven't developed any kind of relationships like that. I keep thinking we're going to, and then we start doing something with some other country, on and on. Yeah, I'm going blank on names, but there's several very good scientists that I collaborate with in Japan and Korea.
So where do you see them in terms of this evolution of this side of anti-aging? Do you see them doing something really aggressively?
I didn't understand that last word. But,
I mean, aggressively. Are they really working
oh
aggressively
yeah,
towards?
no, they're very good. Yeah, I you know, I don't want to sound anti-American, but I find them a lot more serious about doing something useful than a lot of Americans. So I like working with Japan and Korea, and even some people in China.
Okay.
And then I have people in Spain that I work with, and as I mentioned, one person in India, and
You didn't mention the name of the person in India who's working on anti-aging. Is there somebody actually working on anti-aging here in India?
yes.
What's the name? I mean, if it is okay to talk about his name.
Well, I'd already said that I was disappointed with their work.
Okay.
So I don't want to mention their names now, but
okay, it's the same
actually,
team.
there's
Okay.
actually several people working on anti-aging, and yeah, in fact,
okay.
And they speak at conferences. They come all the way from different places in India, and they speak at conferences, and they're very serious about their work and stuff. So,
okay. Maybe I have not come across. Okay, that's interesting. Right.
Offline, I can send you. I'll send you some names.
Sure. Right. So, how much of the whole perspective is changing from this point? That globally there are a lot of efforts happening towards this. So, how optimistic are you that things are going to change significantly and soon?
Well, they're going in the right direction. Okay. When I first started Sierra Sciences, it was we had to keep it all a secret because everybody thought you had to be some kind of nutcase to be working on trying to cure aging. And when I first got my investors, they didn't want their friends to know that they invested. And because I'd already my company used to be called Yonder Technologies. Okay. Right. So I was trying to raise money for Yonder Technologies. And a lot of people knew I was, and a lot of people were acting like, is this the dumbest thing on the world? Somebody's actually thinking they can cure aging. So, but when I got my investors, I started off first with 5 investors. I later had 50 investors, but the first 5 investors, when they actually gave me the money, they asked me to change the name of the company so that none of their friends would know that they invested in this company. And so I changed it to Sierra Sciences because we're right outside the Sierra Mountains. But that all changed when Aubrey de Grey came along. Aubrey de Grey changed everything, and suddenly working in the anti-aging field is very respectable. Okay. I mean, it wasn't easy. He went through a lot of hard times. I'll never forget when he first entered the scene and he was interviewed by news broadcaster Barbara Walters. Mm-hmm. And she thought he was a complete nutcase. In fact, there was one case where he was talking about things. She looked straight in the camera, eyes wide open, like, boy, is this guy loony? Okay. But that didn't stop him. He made a big difference. So now I give credit to Aubrey de Grey for making the world more accepting of anti-aging research. Okay, and he's still as passionate as he's ever been. In fact, he's more passionate about his research than he's ever been now that he's started his LEV, or longevity escape velocity program.
Right. So, how do you associate transhumanist in this whole thing? I mean, do you connect with them? Do you identify yourself with them, or you don't? You
It was
perhaps
funny
don't
because
because you never mentioned it. So.
just as you were saying that, an email popped up on my screen from Gennady Stolarov, who's the
Okay.
head of the transhumanist party here in the United States and worldwide,
He
actually.
was a guest as well. I must.
Oh, really? Okay, good. Because I'm super transhumanist. Okay,
Okay.
in fact, he and I talk. I'm on his panel for his enlightenment salons. Every Sunday from
Yeah.
1 to 3, part of those meetings. I believe that everything I'm doing is part of the humanism things. My definition of transhumanism is the medical and technological enhancement of life. Okay,
Right.
so and one of those enhancements is lengthening our healthy lifespans. Okay, but I'm interested in everything related to enhancing our brains, enhancing our vision, enhancing everything, our strength, stuff like that. So I'm very, very transhuman. In fact, he just sent me I wonder if he's listening right now. Well, this isn't live. He just sent me.
This is not live. Yeah. Oh, nice.
He,
Okay.
so yeah, so I'm very, very, very transhuman. Whenever I speak at any conference, I say I'm not only trying to extend lifespan, I'm trying to extend life. I'm trying to enhance life too. So.
Okay. Well, incidentally, the founder of the Transhumanist Party, he was also part of our. He was a guest as well here. Uh, I'm just trying to recall. Uh, I'm getting his face. I have a better visual memory. Uh, uh, it was wonderful to have him as well. So
You
and
cut out? Are you talking about Gennady?
no, Janadi. Gennady obviously is building that, but the founder is Zoltan.
Zoltan Istan, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he's
Istvan. Yeah.
yeah.
So I managed to get Zoltan Istvan also to the. He was a guest as well. We had a very short conversation, but that was the first introduction to transhumanism for me and for most of my audience here. So and then Gennady and of course, Aubrey was saying that he appreciates what they do, but he does not see himself as a transhumanist. So, so that's where I was not sure. That's why I asked you whether you did, because you don't openly identify, or at least you don't announce, because I didn't see it in your profile also as a transhumanist, so I was not sure.
Well, I'm surprised to hear that about Aubrey because he has spoken at the transhumanist enlightenment salons. Gennady is one of the directors in his longevity escape velocity program.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
And he does. I wonder if he doesn't realize he is a transhumanist, even if he
Well, he
says he's.
said that I do believe in. I mean, I appreciate what they do, but I not. I think it's in the interaction. It's there in the record. I'll share that link with you as well. But it's interesting that we kind of in the same network. Okay. Well, one more question towards this that you said that there are a lot of serious work happening outside of US, right? In Europe, I don't know. You said Korea and Japan. Nothing in Europe, or you did mention Spain and some. So
And
perhaps there is some work happening there.
yeah, and England too.
England as well. Okay. But you also mentioned very early, I think, in our first part of our conversation, that there are many ways to approach longevity, right? Or anti-aging, and you chose to go with telomeres, right?
No,
So,
no. I there's many ways to target aging. I'm trying to work on everything about aging, but as I said, telomeres are the only real hard stop.
Okay.
Nothing
So
else is going to work.
all of them are working on the same space, or they are doing something
Oh, no,
else? I
but
mean, I was just
you prioritize. Okay,
okay.
so I'm prioritizing extending telomere lengths because that's something that has to be done. But as soon as I get that done, I plan on doing everything Aubrey's doing. Okay, so Aubrey's doing a lot of different things and having a tremendous amount of success. I'm trying to focus on one thing at a time. But I chose telomeres because I believe that's the one essential thing that has to be done, or nothing is ever going to work. Okay, and most is fine, but believe me, I support and do research on all of the other things, like even antioxidants and things. But a lot of stuff that there's a lot of overlap between what Aubrey. In fact, even Aubrey's got a program to abolish telomeres, okay, called the Wilt program. Okay. I'm helping with that. Okay. I mean, who knows? Maybe that's the right way to go. It's like, it's all research. We're all best guesses. You know, I'm helping on that. Okay. So I think I answered the question.
Sure. So how do you foresee the role of government agencies here? Because even in the first part we talked about it, you only mentioned investors or billionaires, but what about government agencies? They don't look at supporting these things, because I think much of the technology evolution, in particularly coming out of USA, was largely initially backed by US government, right? You don't see that happening anymore?
Wait, you cut out again, but did you say, why am I not doing government funding?
No. Yeah. Is government not supporting or funding these efforts? Because I think much of the initial technology developments that happened in US was largely funded by government agencies, right? US government agencies.
But nothing ever gets done, okay? Because the government doesn't provide enough funding. And then you spend all your time writing grants.
Oh, okay.
And then there's so many. We did try government funding, and we got two grants. We applied for two grants. We got the money, and when we read the fine print, we sent the money back. Okay, because there was clauses in there that said that if we were unsuccessful, that they would own the project. Okay, and that they would take it over.
But ironically, your last president was perhaps one of the oldest presidents, and your present president is also among the oldest presidents. Given so many politicians who are aging, they don't really see why they need to be backing it. I mean, isn't it a little...
I wish there was some way I could tell President Biden about us, but I mean, he's unreachable. And I don't think any of the granting organizations, the government funding organizations, discuss the ideas with Biden at all. Okay, it's one of the billionaires that I had here sitting across the table from me was Donald Trump. Okay, he offered to invest, and I said no, but I don't want to go into details about why that was. But it's like I often think to myself, if there was some way to reach Biden and let him know about what we're doing, he might be just very interested. But I can't do it. There's a lot of people that seem to be very interested in anti-aging, have a lot of money, but I'm unable to reach them. Almost all the billionaires that I've met with, they found me. I didn't find them. So, and I try to get myself in the public by speaking at conferences, and I've been in several documentaries. A major magazine we have is Popular Science magazine. I was on the cover of that, talking about my research. So those have helped me get some funding. And I do a lot of podcasts, and from what you've been saying, you have like a bigger reach than I thought you did. So maybe this might just be doing this podcast might help. if I haven't already said the wrong things about how I'm not looking for investors. But it's, yeah, I'm going on and on again. But
No,
government funding has just not been the solution. It's too
right.
much work.
But if you do you want to give a shout out to these young entrepreneurs and technologies if they can? Is there a way you want them to work on specific areas or collaborate with? They can reach out. Do you want to give a shout out? Because we actually have a lot of entrepreneurs following this podcast.
Well, just if you come to me and your first question is, how soon would there be a return on investment? I'm going to shut the door on, okay? Because that's what when the first questions are financial return on investment, I don't like it. But if they come to me and they start asking about humanitarian return on investments, okay? It's like, how long will it take for me to cure aging? You know, that kind of thing. And how can we get it around? How can we get it available to people? That gets me very interested. Okay, and I'm talking presently with several people like that are trying to put the money together. And there's something, you know, I'm not a billionaire, and maybe someday I'll understand what it is, but even billionaires can't get hold of their money. I've had several not well-defined, well-known billionaires tell me they'll take out a loan on my behalf, but I'll need to make the loan payments, that kind of thing. And it's like, it's really hard because they don't keep their money under their mattresses. They have their monies tied up in bonds and in foreign countries and things like that. And when somebody comes along and says, I need $300 million, they have a very tough time turning their assets into liquid assets. And so that's what I'm working with people that are trying to do that right now. And I'm just amazed at the trouble it is for them to do that. Because you know, they own like gold mines and they own bonds and oil wells, but they have to sell those to somebody to get cash out of it. And that's just not so easy to do.
Just before we close this, there are surely ways of working with Bill in terms of, you know, you could probably look at the products that you could go to market with, collaborate on research efforts. So there are a lot of ways. In fact, do follow him, do write to him. The links are below, right below this podcast. And yeah, and if you have missed, like I said earlier at the start, if you have missed the first part of the conversation, you don't want to miss it. And for the rest of you, come back soon because we're going to have Bill once again to talk about his perspective on the future and also perhaps try to get him to make some prediction by when we will have a pill that can extend our lifespan. Yep.
If
Bill.
I was to send you my plans, can you provide those to people?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to give a shout
I'm in
out
the
now?
lab so much, I get delinquent. You just, like, even trying to get ready for this thing, I'm oftentimes so busy doing science, like I don't get to, I neglect some of the more important things like getting business plans and things like that to people. So let me send you my package.
Okay.
And then, and nobody needs to sign an NDA to have them. It's freely available. Because all the proprietary stuff is not in there. Okay, if somebody's then they can contact me and I get them to sign an NDA and I'll provide more information.
Perfect. Wonderful. And
I'll send you
Bill,
everything
once
right
again, yes, thank you so much. And all of you can reach out. We'll share whatever the details. Either we'll put it below the podcast, wherever required. We're happy to connect. And also his email ID will be there right below. So do write to him as well. And enjoy the ride. Bill, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.